Okay, so we're going to try and set up a Rising World plugin development environment. This is to work with the latest beta Unity version. So what you'll need is the Java SE development kit 20, and then you'll also need NetBeans, which will be your IDE, which is where we'll write all the code. And you'll need a copy of Rising World in your Steam account with the beta version downloaded. And you'll also need a Rising World dedicated server, which is also the Unity version, which can also be installed via Steam. So first up, we'll go and we'll download each of those things. So we have the Java SE page. I'll put all these links in the description of this video. But basically, you choose the installation that matches your system. I'm on Windows, so I'm going to choose the Windows x64 installer. And since I've already downloaded, I'm not actually going to click on that. But once it's finished downloading, move on to the next thing, which is the Apache NetBeans IDE. Just click on download, download that, and then once it's finished downloading, you should have the files in your downloads folder. So you should have the JDK and the Apache IDE NetBeans. So before we can install NetBeans IDE, we have to install the JDK. So we'll start with that. Click on the security warnings. Pop up with this. Just click on next, hit next. And then click on close. Now that that's done, we can install the NetBeans IDE. It'll load up like this. I usually click customize because I don't want to install the PHP part of it. I don't need Java EE or PHP, but we do need base IDE in Java SE, and HTML5 is needed for those two. So click OK, click on next. I accept the terms, next. Now, this is an important part. If you have multiple JDKs installed, you need to make sure that JDK 20 is selected. And if you hit browse, if there's other versions of JDK, they will be in this folder. But just make sure that JDK 20 is selected. Click OK, click next. Check for updates is always good. Click install. Click on finish. And you should be able to launch the NetBeans IDE now. If I go to my start menu and I start typing NetBeans, you can see it here. Click on that. Once it loads up, you should see a screen like this. What we do next is we click on the tools and go plugins and go to installed and just check all of these. Probably don't need C++. I usually tick everything else though and just click activate. Activate. Then click on finish. Close. Now that we've got the IDE set up, what we'll do is I'll just take you over to Steam and I'll show you the two applications you need there. So you need the Rising World Unity and you also need the dedicated server. To get both of these, you just need to go into manage for each one of these and then go you go properties, not manage. And then you go down to betas and you make sure that you choose Unity new version preview. So once that's done, you also do the same for the dedicated server. Go down to betas. make sure you choose Unity New Version Preview so that you're running both of those. And then you should launch the dedicated server once so that it generates all the files. And then once it's done that, you can just type exit here. All right, cool. So we're going to switch back to the IDE now. We've got a few little extra steps that we need to do. So first thing that we're going to do is going to create a new project. And in this screen, we're going to choose Java with Ant. And it's going to choose Java application. Click on next. Now this will be the name of the plugin. For this one, I'm going to call it TestPlugin. And you can just leave everything default. Click on finish. Notice that it'll be stored in your documents folder in a folder called NetBeans project. Click finish. You can change that to whatever you want. Clicking finish creates a new project. The first thing we need to do is we need to add the plugin library to the project. So on libraries, if you click add library, you'll see a list of libraries. It's not going to be in there. So you have to click on create. I call this RW for Rising World plugin API. Let's leave it as class libraries. I click OK. And then I have to click add jar folder. So then I have to go to my Steam directory, which is in this particular drive for me. If I go to Steam library, and we're looking for the Rising World folder, so it's in common, go over to Rising World, and then we're going to go into new version because we're using the Unity version. So go in there, and then we're going to go into the data folder, and then we're going to go into the Java folder, and we're going to choose plugin API.jar. So I'm going to click add. And once you've done that, you can click OK. And then you can just add that to the library. You should only have to do this for the very first time that you add it. But you will need to add the library to your project each time you create a new project. So if I click to cancel on this and then I wanted to go, add a library, I should see RW plugin API in the list. So then there it is. Hit add library. And you can see it's added the library. The next thing that we need to do is create the resources folder for this project. Without the resources folder, the plugin will not load into Rising World Server. So if I click on the Files tab, and then I open here, and I open Source, then I right-click Source, I go New Folder, and I call it Resources, and then I just click Finish. Then I need to create one more folder inside there called plugin.yml. It might just be easier to do it in the File Explorer. You need to open the project in your File Explorer, open up the folder, open source, go into resources, I'm going to go new text document, I call it plugin.yml. And I'm just going to click on yes to this. And then if I come back here, it should be there, which it is. And so I can edit it in here. I've just got a copy of a template one that I've got. And so I'll go over what this is. It's just basically the configuration for the plugin. So the first is the name of the plugin. The second one is really important. It's the path to the main Java file for the project. So if we look back at the projects tab, you can see there's a package called TestPlugin, and that's this. And then there's the TestPlugin.java, and that's this part. And now this is case sensitive, so it's very important that your package and the Java file have the correct case in them. Otherwise, it will not work. So version is just the version of the plugin. You can change that as you make updates. The author is who wrote the plugin. Team is if you have a team of people, you can put a name there. And description is just basic description of plugin. License, MITs just means anyone can use it, but you can put your own license there, and you can also put your website. So after you've written all that out, I'll also put a copy of that in the video description, or a link to a copy of that in the video description. You can hit save, get rid of that blank line, save. All right, cool. So now we're ready to import or start setting up the main class so that it's ready to be used with Rising World. So the first thing we'll do is we'll open up the Java file, and you'll see here it's pretty basic. There's a few functions that we have to put in order to get it to work. And those are the on enable and on disable functions, which I'll also provide a copy of this code as well. So I'm just going to paste that over the main so that these are the only two functions in there. It's going to show squiggly lines because we haven't extended the class yet. So in order to make this functional, we have to extend the class, and we do that by putting this line here, extends plugin and implements listener. And you'll see there's still squiggly lines because we haven't imported all the packages that we need. So if I click on plugin, if I alt enter on that, it'll come up with add import for Rising World API plugin. Click on that, and bam, goes there. Same with listener. I click on it, I go alt enter, import listener. Okay. And then that is like the most basic plugin. Another thing that we can chuck in there just to make sure that the plugin is loaded is if I copy this, paste this in here. So test, we'll call it test plugin loaded. So basically this will just say that the plugin is loaded, and you'll be able to see that in the server console. Okay, so a little bit of a better explanation of what this does. So it's extending the Rising World plugin API that we added in the libraries, and it implements listener, and listener is used for when you want to put in event handlers. So like when a player sends a command or a player respawns, stuff like that. But we'll worry about that later. For now, we're just setting up a super simple plugin and making sure that we can get it to load in our server. So I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to go run, and then I'm going to click build project. Okay, cool. It says that it's finished building it, and if I go to the files tree, you should be able to see this folder called dist, and you can see the TestPlugin.java. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the Explorer. We're going to go back to the NetBeans project folder and go into our plugin, and we're going to look for the dist folder. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to copy the dist folder, and then what we need to do is we need to go into the server files of our dedicated server. And since you ran it once, all those files should be generated. So the quickest way to get to your server files is to open up Steam, right click the Rising World Dedicated Server, and go manage, and then go browse local files. There should be a plugins folder. This is where you're going to paste the dist folder that we copied, and then you're just going to rename this particular folder to whatever your plugin's called. It's test plugin. mine. Fix the capitalization like so. And now we are ready to test to see if the plugin is actually going to load in. So what we'll do is go back to Steam, launch the Rising World Dedicated Server. And if we scroll up a little bit, we can see that it has loaded the plugin. It's given us the YAML file, and it's also said that it's added a plugin, and we can see that it has echoed out the little test message that we put in on the onEnable function. So that plugin has successfully loaded into our server. It doesn't do anything just yet because it's so basic, but that's okay. That's a great start. So there's one more thing that we can do to make this whole process a little bit easier, rather than having to manually copy over uh, the jar file every single time you build it. So I'm just going to show you how to configure your environment so that when you click on build, that it gets auto deployed to your server directory. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to go back into NetBeans, and you're going to go to the Files tab and make sure you go into the NB project folder. So you click on this, and then you open Project Properties. And what we're looking for in here is dist.dir, and we're going to change that to our plugin name. So test plugin. And then what we need to do is we need to point the dist jar to the directory of our server. So I'm just going to copy that from my notepad, or my Explorer window rather. So if you can see where we were before, if I just click up here, it'll give me the directory. I can copy this, and then I can go back to the settings, the beginning here. I can paste this in like so, and I'll have to, since I'm on Windows, I need to put enough, I need to remove all the backslashes and put in forward slashes. So I'll just do that now. Forward slash there, forward slash, slash, forward slash. So you have the directory to your plugins directory for your dedicated server, and then forward slash, and then whatever was there before. So dist dir test plugin.jar. And then if you just save this, if I go back to my plugins folder and I remove this, you don't need to do that necessarily. I need to make sure I shut down my dedicated server first. Do that. Okay, and then delete this. And then if I go to run build, and now let's finish building, I open up the plugins directory again. You can see that it automatically put it there. And if I start up the dedicated server, should be able to see that it loaded in just fine. All right, cool. So if you wanted to connect to your dedicated server, you just launch a game and you click on multiplayer and you click connect to IP, and you can just enter 127.0.0.0.1, which is the loopback address, so local host. And if I hit connect, I'm now playing on that dedicated server. And so this is where you can test all your plugins. And if you add yourself to the admins, you can then just use the console and type reload plugins every time you do a build. And then that way, your latest changes will be in the game. So I know we covered a lot here today, but that is how you set up a plugin development environment for Rising World.